Thank you so much for joining us, to the listeners and to our speakers and the guests. I'm Jen, and welcome to another episode of Blockchain Banter. I'm really very excited to have Token Engineering Academy here with us today. Paper Street, it's always great to have you. Mark, it's always wonderful to have you up here. But Token Engineering Academy is something that I personally have been following and would like to understand more about. I'm not an engineer. I don't design tokenomics. So this is something where it's like I feel like I can really just kind of dig in and we can explore and we can do that together just kind of openly with everyone here. So thank you so much for joining us. We're discussing redesigning the economic system with DeFi, but I feel like there's so much more to speak about, especially with the retweet I saw. Angela, thank you so much for being here. Redesigning the economic system, decentralizing, managing risks, maximizing resilience. These are all things that we kind of like, these are our goals, right? So it's wonderful to dig in a little bit. I'd like to first invite our panelists to each give a brief introduction, a little bit about themselves, their involvement in the space. Um, Maybe, Angela, you wouldn't mind starting us off, telling us a little bit about yourself and maybe the inspiration behind the Token Engineering Academy.
Absolutely. Thanks first for having me today. Excited to be here. Yeah, what is token engineering? Token engineering is the design, verification, and optimization of crypto economic systems. We see this as a new discipline, engineering discipline in its own rights, because if you look at token systems, we have the element of computer science. We are coding these new systems. We are creating tokens with code. And we have the economic element. And here we apply economics, how to build economic systems, how to build markets. Game theory is an important element, how to tackle attack vectors in our economic systems. But on top, we have new elements and dimensions that are not available in our traditional economic systems, because we have the shared ledger, and we can measure and explore and analyze economic transactions at a granularity that wasn't there before. We can apply data science, we can even apply AI, we can build controllers for our economic systems, and we can steer these economic systems using algorithms like AMMs, and build exciting stuff like carbon. And plus, and this is new to any engineering field, we have the human layer. We are not talking about physical systems, chemical, mechanical systems. We have the human element here. We have human behavior, we have adversarial behavior, and we also have decentralized governance, voting systems, decision making, token based ownership. So it's a really wide range of super exciting opportunities and challenges here. It's a total cross-disciplinary field, and you can't study this nowhere at no university, because it's crypto native, and it combines elements of various other disciplines. And this was our motivation in 2020 to start the Token Engineering Academy, because we saw the challenges crypto projects are struggling with in building token utility and designing their tokens. And since for a while, we collaborated with universities, but there was just nothing that was suitable. So we decided to start the TE Academy and build the first curriculum in this field. It's called TE Fundamentals. It's an online course plus study groups. We have so far more than 40 study groups, people who are studying token engineering across the globe, in more than 14 time zones, in various languages, and so far more than 2,600 students enrolled in the TE Fundamentals program. So it's pretty awesome. And we'll be at EFCC in Paris. But I'll stop here for a moment, because I guess this was the introduction only, right?
No, it's wonderful. Thank you. I've actually seen the whole list of speakers that you guys will have at ETHCC, and it's kind of, I mean, it's neat to see the sort of variety of different sorts of discussions, and presentations that'll be happening. And so, like, I knew, talking about redesigning the economic system was just one small area of, discussion that we can go into, or one angle that we could go. And I'm, like I said, really looking forward to kind of broadening that out. Thank you so much. Will, or, as we see him up here, Paper Street, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in this space.
Sure. I'm Will Jones, founder of Paper Street Capital. I'm an investor in the space and came from TradFi, which I still am there. So kind of have my feet in both pools. And the writer of a Substack called Not Smart, Just Interested. I genuinely just love I love learning about Web3 has so much to learn from, but just learning a lot about business and life and all this. And honestly, the Token Engineering Academy is just right up my alley. Like I like the idea of, as the space develops, you need this formalized, you know, it's almost like a brain trust. You just need people thinking about these things all the time and developing. And she's right. This is a mixture of different disciplines coming together. And it's wonderful to see like this big group of people coming together and putting this together. Even if just like I was glancing through, and I share Jen's curiosity. I want to learn more because it seems like there's a lot of accreditation opportunities here, and this is just the beginning of this space. So I'm really thrilled to be a part of this call.
Thank you so much, Will, and it's great to have you always. Mark, if you would tell us about yourself and about Carbon.
Yeah, certainly. I can also tell you a little bit about my experience with TE Academy. But yeah, my name is Mark Richardson. I came from a organic chemistry and physical sciences and life sciences background. I joined Bancor as a full-time contractor in January of 2021. And I've taken over as the de facto leader of the project since October of last year. Carbon is our most recent development and is a profound change in the way that we view on-chain liquidity. Despite Bancor being the originator of the AMM concept, Carbon, somewhat paradoxically, is turning its back on that idea and instead giving back agency to people that are making markets on chain. So whereas an AMM is a prescriptive trading strategy and one that is often characterized as being short gamma or mean reverting, Carbon, on the other hand, is extremely high alpha. And so essentially, rather than trying to force liquidity to remain around whatever the current market price is, which is something that is, I would say, a challenge that is being very well addressed by other projects in the space. Carbon seeks to service a completely different aspect of the market, which is one where people aren't necessarily interested in trading at the price as it currently exists, but have a view of where the market is headed and would like to commit to trading at price targets that haven't yet been reached. So it's a slightly different view, and I think something that complements the existing DeFi infrastructure in a pretty profound way. My experience with Token Engineering Academy actually began around about the same time that I started contracting for Bancor, and so I met Angela and Vasily, who runs the Powerpool project, and I joined what was then the Balancer Labs simulation workshop, and so I hosted sort of a focus group there, and I met a bunch of really interested people that were looking to sort of leverage blockchain infrastructure and technology to all sorts of different really interesting use cases. But one of the things that I was really sort of blown away with respect to the way that TE is set up is just how well organized it is. There are so many I would say that the culture in DeFi and in blockchain in general is that you have to sort of do your own research and sort of put in your own work. But there isn't really a huge amount of sort of supporting like resources to enable you to do that. There's an overabundance, I would say, of like opinionated materials where people sort of speculate on things, but there really isn't much in the way of showing you how to actually just do a calculation at the end of the day. One of the I think one of the founding papers for TE, and I'll let Angela sort of speak to this, but I remember speaking to Vasily back in the day, and he was sort of inspired by this sort of periodic table of tokens that token engineering had been putting together about what sort of properties a token can have and what it's supposed to be used for. And that was something that I thought was desperately needed, actually. Because there was no real, there wasn't really much conversation back then as to how we should categorize all of these different things, or if two tokens can really be compared in a heads-up way. And so, sort of breaking everything down and turning it into something of a science was something that I found very, very inspiring. But then, yeah, more to the point, the stuff that we were doing with AMMs and actually teaching people how the underlying algorithms function. How to set them up in either their own Python environments or even on an Excel spreadsheet, and actually, go from, first principles to execution of what an entire AMM infrastructure might look like, is something that I don't think anyone else has really achieved. And so, yeah, token engineering is something that I have enormous respect for in the space, and I'm really looking forward to seeing them in Paris. For those who aren't aware, I'll be sharing their stage with them and presenting on the development of Carbon. So thank you so much for that invitation, Angela. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you for your kind words about the Academy. And by the way, you mentioned Vasily's value classification system, and he'll provide an update at the Token Engineering Barcamp. So if you're got interested by Mark's pitch about this classification of tokens, you can meet Vasily in person in Paris at the Barcamp that we run on July 22nd. You can find this event in tokenengineering.net events, by the way. Yeah. And I must say, Mark, I remember very well these sessions where we were wrangling with Python and spreadsheets to get to the core and first principles of AMMs. And these mechanisms and algorithms are most of the time not super intuitive. And but still, if you are a token designer, if you try to come up with improvements, you have to get to the core of it. You have to gain an intuition of the behavior edge cases of an algorithm. And this was a brilliant example of sessions where we get to the core of it, try to separate signal from noise, curate, and provide a really fundamental understanding, and also methods to establish the rigor we envision for token engineering, because it is actually, you have to understand it well, you have to be able to model these systems, you have to be able to deal with complex dynamic systems to design your system well, no matter if it's a DeFi, AMM, if it's other reward mechanisms, if it's a fee, or if it's government mechanisms. And we are just at the starting point. And I think I'm always super excited when I can see projects who start to go beyond copy and paste, right? You might be able to copy paste smart contracts to have a starting point, and you might be able to copy paste an algorithm, but to really make the most of it for your project, you have to be able to handle complex systems. And we hope to train token engineers and get more people excited about this field and enable the total crypto field to leverage the full potential we have with crypto and token systems.
Yeah, I think it's sort of one of the values that I think you and I share. Like even with my own experience, there's often a very strong bias for everything that we do in this space to be highly like product oriented, and that's absolutely justified, right? At the end of the day, we need to create something that people want to use. But to understand these things, there really is no avoiding actually having to do a calculation at some point. There's a YouTube channel that I used to watch with some level of frequency called PBS Spacetime, and it sort of prides itself on making some of the concepts in things like general relativity and astrophysics relatively accessible. But they always stress that intuiting through these things is only like 10% of the battle. You don't really understand something until you write it down or until you actually crunch numbers and see how things eventuate. And there are some questions that you can never intuit through. And I think in AMMs, this is something that is rife in the space, right? There are concepts like loss versus rebalancing, which is something that I see posted with regular engagement on Twitter. And I wonder how many people have actually gone to the effort of, opening a notebook and writing down some of these numbers and seeing these things come to fruition in front of them. Because I don't think that you can really understand how these things operate and what their influences are and what their consequences are, unless you're comfortable with the numbers. And this is something that I was absolutely, like I said, blown away with when I joined TE Academy, and the people that were there willing, with their sharing their screens and actually, performing these calculations in front of each other and wrestling with the math is just, there really is no substitute when you have to master a subject. So it's absolutely critical. One of the things that I've said in podcasts previously is that we're entering into this weird paradigm now where it's not necessarily the fact that people aren't or don't have the technological prowess to be able to engage with Web3, right? Like, I really don't think setting up a hardware wallet or learning to use MetaMask is that difficult. But what I do think is that we are sort of lacking this economic literacy, where people, once they're given this freedom to do whatever they want with the cash that they have on chain, we need to sort of eventually sort of step back and ask if we're doing, our due diligence, or if we are honoring, I guess, our responsibilities as project leaders, that we actually are making that effort to give people the education required to take that economic responsibility seriously. And yeah, it's something that I don't think many people are paying attention to, and I'm just so relieved that we have people like Angela and Basilia around to sort of captain the ship on that effort.
Thanks so much.
I actually pinned to the top. You were saying that Basilia is going to be at ETHCC, and Mark, you are also going to be there. So I did pin those to the top. And for anybody who wasn't here, in the very beginning when Angela was talking about what Token Academy actually, or Token Engineering Academy actually is, I did post their pin tweet up to the top as well. So you can kind of read through that also and catch up a little bit. Angela, are most of those that are involved in the academy actually, like, Mark, I don't know if you consider yourself an engineer per se, but who do you find this is mostly geared towards? Because even just being a DeFi enthusiast, maybe I'm just speaking for myself here, this is something that I would find absolutely fascinating. Do you find others like myself who are involved in this, like those that are strictly there to learn, not necessarily create their own projects, and who would maybe need this sort of information and create their own token, but just more those that are interested? Or do you find it's more like the actual builders and engineers in the space?
Okay. Yeah, our typical target audience, no matter if in our courses or at events like at FCC, is 50% people who are building stuff. So crypto startups, project team members, people who are maybe coming from a computer science background, or are considering launching a tokens, and thus are looking for, okay, how can we approach a token design. And the other half is coming from related backgrounds like economics, engineering, various engineering fields, and also math and physics that are excited about this opportunity to design economic systems. So we have both, and we are glad about this mix. Also, I shouldn't forget people who are excited about the opportunities in shared ownership. Then coming from a design or Web 2 background in product design, with their knowledge about how to build value propositions, how to build products, product market fit, and then how to translate this into incentive design. This is also a big portion of the people at the Academy.
Go ahead, Will. You have a question.
Yeah, it sounds like too that you're bringing together a lot of really bright people thinking about these things. So it is developing public policy. It seems like that'd be a natural fit there too. Is that something y'all already do, or is something you consider? That it just seems like a great fit with all those like-minded people.
Building public. I sound was a bit broken.
Oh, I'm sorry. Putting together a public policy, like kind of like a think tank of helping policymakers make regulation.
Yeah, we are collaborating closely with the UC in Europe, the people who consult regulators in Brussels, and are also signed the latest comments and supported them on the MiCA regulation. Not so much at SEC, but I think this is super relevant. And I would actually love to see the total crypto ecosystem to be more active there on both ends, right? Educating regulators and at the same time also think about standards. We are at the moment running a project on AI-powered token engineering. So how to apply artificial intelligence to skill up our human brains dealing with complex systems. So here it's not about random chat conversations, it's rather about support token engineers in running simulations and drawing conclusions with AI power. Now, what we found is that even for a simple use case like token sales, it's super hard to get to standards that we certainly need to build this layer of AI on top. And without standards and let's say a shared understanding of how we report, how to set up stuff from a token sales up to vesting schedules, up to incentive, how we report on an ongoing schedule and an ongoing base. So many things are hard, not only regulation, actually innovation is hard. And this is what I'd love to see in the total crypto space, I must say.
I think just anecdotally, I remember I met with, so in one of these focus groups that we had at Token Engineering, I met so Octopus, who has become something of a an influencer on Twitter in recent months, which is amazing to see. I also met someone named Kurti, who was setting up a what I would consider to be something that's like very let's say DeFi adjacent. It was a very well structured insurance primitive. For those in the know, it was like an insurance linked security, and was supposed to be something that's traded essentially only by extremely qualified, highly regulated individuals and organizations. But it's that type of discourse that you get in these groups. So it wasn't, it's easy to sort of hear the word token in something and assume that it's kind of blockchain as usual, but it really wasn't. What Kirthi was working on, and I should really catch up with him to find out how it's come to fruition, but was really sort of linking together what's called catastrophic insurance primitives. So these are devices that are meant to, meant to insure against things like Hurricane Katrina style events, right? And the types of earthquakes and things that you might see in California and so on. These very, devastating, both financially and in terms of, the human cost, that can be very, very difficult economically to deal with. And what he saw was through AMMs and through tokenization that there might be a way to sort of thoroughly spread that risk out over a very large surface area. And it was, it was through conversations with him that I learned about how the UK, for example, is kind of strategically positioning itself to take back some of the economic sector that it lost during Brexit to Bermuda and others, and that the regulators over there are extremely pragmatic in setting up regulatory sandboxes and things for blockchain primitives for these kinds of financial products. So it's not, it really isn't, blockchain as usual. These things that we're talking about with regards to token sales and AMM dynamics and incentives and so on. It's something that I think we often treat is like a relatively new concept or something that is specific to DeFi, but it's actually not. These concepts translate very, very well into traditional financial paradigms. And yeah, it's that kind of caliber of conversation that you find in these groups that I don't think you find anywhere else.
That would make sense of that part of the world bringing insurance back, because like the history of insurance for the most part was in like coffee houses in Europe, where an underwriter was one guy, and they, and this is as like the ideas of probability and risk were still being developed. Like they weren't there yet. So you would buy a policy from a guy in a coffee house, but there wasn't like it's X% probability this ship is going to sink if you were shipping goods. And it was almost gambling, but it was how we figured out how to develop that industry. And it's so fascinating because it's like Mark was saying, it's all these are old ideas that are just this technology's refining and able to utilize better. And that's what's really, really excited me about tokenizing a lot of things. And insurance is one of them. That's really interesting idea. It's just it's a continuation of a very long trend of like back to 1200. Like I think that's when Fibonacci was working his magic. So it's new, but it's also very old. And I'm genuinely excited to see how this continues to develop, and it's really exciting to think we have a group like TE that's just concentrating all this brain power on it. So it's really fun.
It would amaze and disturb you how little we've drifted from that 1800s coffee house style, insurance paradigm.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, like for example, shipping insurance is still largely performed that way. If you've got a cargo ship full of Mercedes or something that you're trying to take across the world, generally you still have to go and visit someone like in their office and broker, an insurance deal. And there are whole industries recently that have kind of sprung up to service this sector, because some of the software that it's running is so old that it won't run on modern PCs. So there's a startup. I think it might be a Silicon Valley startup. I need to sort of check my citations here, but they specialize in basically building old PCs that will still run things like Windows NT, so that they can continue to run, the software that is currently, holding up the entire insurance industry. And that's terrifying. And so, we often, a lot of the conversations that I have about blockchain and DeFi and the sort of technology that's being built is, how likely is the world to adopt, something new, right? There's definitely a cost to trying to bring people over into a new paradigm. But I'd say that, when we're at this stage where you need specialist PC builders because that system is so antiquated that it no longer runs on modern hardware, right? We're due for a change anyway. And yeah, it's, I wouldn't have been exposed to that world were it not for my conversations with Kathy.
Yeah, and there's more to it. Insurance is a great example. Another great example, actually, so many are building on in the crypto field is governance, and decision making, collective decision making is not something we invented in crypto land. It has a tradition of thousands of years, and it's exciting to see. Just recently, we had a conversation with a DAO that tries to build up an alternative to one token, one vote, in the direction of we want to have our stakeholder groups represented and they get a certain share of the decision-making power, so to represent groups. And okay, that sounds like promising idea, but okay, once you've set up a certain share, how would you ever change it? And then look at the evolution of a DAO. Just look at Bancor. The life cycle of such a project has varying and evolving requirements when it comes to decision making and the most important moves to take. And so it's probably not a good idea to have fixed chairs for forever. How to weight decision-making power for long-term sustainability, for making it attractive at a certain point in time to certain stakeholders. These are all considerations we have to take into account. And here we can build on what's already there. So there is a discipline called social choice, we have computational social choice, and there are people who have been working on algorithms for such cases for decades. And it's great to build these links between existing knowledge and then now transfer it into the cyber physical area where we're dealing still with physical systems, but can steer them with new technology across the globe. And this is very, very exciting, I must say. And there's so much potential.
I think Will has some strong opinions on decision making and governance. I think that he and I have spoken about it. He and I have spoken about it before. Go ahead, Will.
I mean, I'm so fascinated by this side of it. It's like, and Mark's right, like I can get worked up over, like this is me coming from traditional finance into DAOs, and it's a little bit of growing pain isn't the right word, but it's just like I'm learning, and some of this is like I can't see how this is efficient, but I do like how we're just figuring it out. We're trying things, and I'd be so interested to hear more about what y'all are discussing and putting together in terms of how to optimize this process, because it can be so great. Like right now it just seems like we're finding the right balance, and at times I'm just like, maybe we do just need a handful of leaders just to get decisions making done. But then again, it's decentralized. Like, well, how can you organize a decentralized like endeavor? Like, I know the answer is yes. It's just how is that optimal? And like, what's the optimal route and all this? And yeah, over the past few months, I will grind my teeth over things, just have to let it go. And then and then other times I've just been completely wrong. So it's a learning process for me too.
I feel like it's a learning process for the ones that are, running different projects or, building different projects, and for the DAO members themselves, like Will, because we've had our conversations about this as well, especially with like our DAO discussions that we were hosting for Bancor. I want to ask you a quick question. Will, you had posted something recently about real estate. And I was kind of curious, Angela, if this is one of the areas that you've seen maybe an increase in. I know insurance, I've personally seen an increase. I think it kind of caught my attention back in maybe 2020 or 2021 with like a decentralized sort of parametric insurance. And we've seen more of these coming like into the space recently. Do you see real estate becoming any sort of a major talking point?
Well, if you ask me about trends in crypto, I would rather say gaming is growing and it will be big. I mean, the next bull market will be crypto games, NFTs, collecting, and the metaverse, of course. I must say, I feel that real estate and connecting real world goods and tokenized real world goods is still a struggle because of the market you address that is already regulated and because of the securities issues around tokenized real estate. So that are major challenges still in the field.
Sorry, Will.
Yeah, I'll limit myself. I'm not going to rant, but because I come from the commercial real estate world for the most part. Um, Andrew's right. It is a struggle, but also in a way that most people don't consider, which is there's several very large industries that have been built on obfuscation of data, meaning real estate is super liquid, and part of that is there's no centralized database. It's like, okay, fair enough. There's a lot of these are paper leases, handshake agreements, and if you own an office building, you don't the landlord typically doesn't want the tenants talking to each other because otherwise a market develops on what the actual rent is. So you may have a tenant that's paying a lot more, and anyway, and all right, I'm gonna spin off, but I would love for tokenization to make its way into real estate. It needs it very, very badly because it's wildly inefficient. But Angela's right. There's not only a lot of regulatory headaches because it's been captured, I would say, by invested parties that have a financial incentive to keep things how they are by the tune of billions of dollars. And so, which I brought it up on Twitter at one point and just got so much backlash. I was like, okay, I get it. Like brokers love their 6% commissions in the US. And, it's just such a frustrating, it's frustrating because I'm involved so much into it. That's probably a lot of it. But I am thrilled that there is at least some interest in taking this technology into this space because it would do the world a lot of good. It would hurt some people who have made livings and generational livings on rent extraction, no pun intended. But I'll stop there. I will keep going for 20 minutes, but I hope somebody's working on it because they need it.
Yeah, and I hope we have a lot of crypto projects with such ideas on how to apply this technology to fields that maybe we haven't even discovered. And this is why we've built this program at FCC in Paris around the maker's perspective. So if you consider tokens for your project, tokenize what are the perspectives we'd like to share. And we have three sections. One is the token launch, which is I'm super happy that Trent will be open to share his 6 years of being a crypto founder, launching a token, fundraising included, decentralizing it, finding the business model, the product market fit for Ocean. And he called the title of his talk is A Decentralization Journey Under Fraud, Rug Pulls, and Scam Attacks. So I promise this will be really first-hand experience in token land. And we'll discuss the top 10 challenges for a token launch for projects who would like to tokenize real estate or others. So what are the challenges you should keep in mind? And also how to value tokens if you'd like to fundraise. Also a super important topic now at the bear market, and how to be able to build your project and not be locked in a token sale that might be not beneficial for you. And then we have the token design and optimization section, where I'm happy that Mark will be on board. And I'm very much looking forward to hear the full carbon design story. So I know some people in your team. I followed the design phase and then also the launch, and it will be exciting to hear it from you. And then we have also Gabi from Gauntlet, who will share news about their growth strategies framework. They are collaborating or working for Uniswap at the moment to understand what incentives work in the Uniswap ecosystem and what incentive doesn't work and how to improve them. And we'll have talks about data-driven token design, applying AI, as I just mentioned, using AI, LLMs, and machine learning in the token engineering context, and risk data science to manage risk. So I guess this will provide the audience a good overview on what the power of the tools we can apply to token questions, and what directions to take at the very beginning, and then also later on, once you have a more sophisticated tools to manage your token ecosystem. And last but not least, the last section is about how to establish this at your startup. We have Tom from Crypto Econ Lab, Filecoin, and Lukas from Tokenomia Pro, and both are token engineering practitioners, and can talk about how to establish a team, where to find, how to hire token engineers, how to sync or integrate token engineering work in your development roadmap, etc. And last but not least, Chris Baruch, who recently joined Adin and is a token engineer and also author of the T Fundamentals program, will share more about how to become a token engineer, because this is early stage. As I mentioned, many people come from a different field, from Web 2, with an economics background, with a computer science background. Now, what could be next? How to grow and start your token engineering career.
For you. I saw that some there were almost like submissions or applications for being a speaker with Token Engineering Academy at ETHCC. Are you still accepting those? If anybody's interested in joining, can they submit that still?
Okay. Yeah, thank you for asking. So the program I was just talking about is at ETHCC, the main conference in Paris. And this is one day, Wednesday 19th, a track in the main conference. So here you need the speaker applications are closed, and you need ETHCC ticket. This is number one. And the second event we run at ETHCC Week is the Community Barcamp, the Token Engineering Barcamp, where we gather on July 22nd to gather the community. And here we invite the community to propose talks. And we have published a number of talks already. As I mentioned, Vasily will be there with the token valuation framework. Lisa from economics design will have a workshop on measuring GDP of crypto networks. Sherman Foshmir, the author of the Token Economy book, will introduce a token design thinking framework. We'll have Nate, Eat Sleep Crypto, talking about demand-side tokenomics. And we'll have the bonding curve research team with a workshop on modeling bonding curves with Conding, their own Python library. And this is an event where we still accept speaker proposals because we think that after a full week of EFCC events, conference talks, there are so many topics that pop up, and there will be certainly a lot of topics around tokens that pop up, and we'd like to provide a space for the community to discuss these topics, to collaborate, to come up with new ideas. And this is July 22nd, the Token Engineering Bar Camp. And again, you'll find it at tokenengineering.net, the events calendar, and register, come as an attendee, and there you'll find also the link to apply with a talk or a discussion you'd like to propose.
Amazing. Much. Oh, go ahead, Will.
Just to highlight one, the topic on the GDP of token network sounds super interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, because today we are measuring the value of a token ecosystem mainly in market cap or token price. And this puts a lot of pressure and, also volatility on every project. And sometimes it's so hard to see how early stage projects struggle with the notion of the value of the ecosystem just by a very tracked by a very volatile bull market, bear market token price. And at the same time, of course, there's more to measure than just the token. So yeah, I'm looking forward to Lisa's workshop. Be there.
Really quickly, aside from the all of the events that you guys are hosting at ECC, you also put out, is it weekly that you do these threads and these newsletters? How often do you put that, lighting different talks, different presentations, main points of discussion? How often is that?
This is sent out every single week. So our newsletter collects the most relevant, interesting publications and events and comments from researchers in the fields. We track papers and then also recent work that was published for DAOs, for, as I mentioned, decision making in the DeFi space, for standardization, regulation, and generally innovation in new value capturing mechanisms. This can be supply, how to distribute tokens, how to manage inflation, deflation, new concepts, or on the demand side, how to incentivize stakeholders in the ecosystem, how to come up with creative incentive mechanisms, how to be aware of attack vectors, how to also, from a practical point of view, how are projects dealing with challenges here strategically in their move of step-by-step building up utility, or on the technology side, how to detect attacks, etc. So sign up at tokenengineering.net. It's a weekly newsletter, worth reading for anyone interested in tokens.
Yeah, it's definitely been a wonderful resource, even just seeing it, the threads here and then kind of expanding on it. Like Mark had mentioned, we always say, like, do your own research, but really the space evolves so quickly. It's really just so impossible for one person on their own to do all of this research and stay up to date and know all that's happening within the space. So it's really great to see those weekly threads go out and these weekly reads. I did pin, I believe it's the latest, to the top of the spaces. So if anybody isn't aware and they want to go ahead and check it out and see what that is all about, I definitely do recommend that as a useful resource for staying kind of updated and a little bit of the behind the scenes as well, what the builders are working on, the sort of obstacles they're facing and how that's all being discussed. If you guys have anything else to add, I would love to hear, your final thoughts. And Paper Street, maybe you wouldn't mind giving us a little bit on how we can find your Substack. What is it? Not smart, just interested.
That's
I
it.
love,
Go ahead, Jen.
no, I was saying I love that name, by the way.
I would think it's perfect. It's like, and the idea was just always like, I consider myself intellectual maybe like a 6.5. But if I'm interested in something, it's insatiable. Like I'll just, I can read it all day. Um, yeah, so Substacks, not smart, just interested. It'll be, if you just look at my Twitter, I think I have the pinned tweet is one of the pieces I like the most right now. I was laughing when I was muted. Just Mark and Jen know me well enough to know what my soft spots are, and they're just winding me up. Like you pull up real estate, it's like wheels gonna go off. So now you know what I care about. And DAOs, it's something I gotta kind of reconcile. But I'm like I love how the technology is hopefully going in the right direction, and especially all the great work that TE's doing. And I was thrilled to be a part of this because I've like Jen, I've kind of been following in the background of what's been going on, and seeing that Mark's going to speak there, and it's like, what are they doing? And I was just looking into it the past couple of days, and it's just really great work, really interesting. So thank you for putting all that work together and making the space better. Like we certainly need groups like that and people like you to devote all this time. So thank you for being part of this, and thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Will. I did pin the Will's pinned tweet, his, I guess, favorite of the moment, the inevitability of the business model. So, Will, I have to say, your Substacks have been amazing. You're an amazing writer, and the things that you are writing about, you're definitely a thinker, and it kind of opens eyes to different angles, different perspectives. And I love that your writing has been able to do that for me. So yes, like thank you, Token Engineering, for doing all of this, Angela, for doing all of this. And like Will said, making this a better space. And Will, I also, want to give you a little bit of a shout out because you have, at least for me, and I've spoken with others that have read your writing as well, kind of just opened our eyes from different angles. So thank you so much for being here. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you for saying that. Really kind.
Of course.
Yeah, thanks for having me today. And I hope to see you all in Paris or in our online events. There's so much to do in this phase.
Absolutely. And like I said earlier, I did pin a whole bunch of information from Token Engineering Academy up on the top, specifically, some that are geared towards the events happening at EthCC in Paris. If you're going to be there, definitely check those out. Mark, if you would, I know we spoke about carbon a little bit in the beginning. Maybe just kind of give us a final run through, a summary of carbon, and then maybe just a little bit more on your specific talk at EthCC with Token Engineering.
Yeah, absolutely. Or better yet, we've got we host a weekly coffee break on our Discord server, and that's around about this time tomorrow. And I recommend anyone who's interested in DeFi or blockchain and what's happening to kind of go there. It's relatively agendaless. We don't have to talk, specifically about carbon. We can talk about whatever we want. But in general, I try to take that opportunity to discuss specific questions regarding the protocol and how user decisions affect their profitability and these kinds of things. But yeah, the highest possible level is that one of my good friends from the Aori protocol, which is a new options protocol that's just launched on Ethereum mainnet, has categorized the AMM as being a subset of an order book. And he's right. The pricing algorithms used by AMMs is just a way of enumerating essentially an infinite number of limit orders. And that concept of being an automatic market maker is referring to the fact that as orders are taken, they're immediately put back immediately behind the market price, so that there's liquidity always close to the middle. But the limitation there is that an AMM, because it's a subset of an order book, will never be able to compete with the flexibility and efficiency of an order book. And so with Carbon, and this is something that I'll be speaking about in Paris, the idea was to go one layer up, right? So rather than create something else that's a subset of an order book, can you create something of which an order book is a subset of it? And that's what we've done. So Carbon is the next umbrella up, right? It covers everything that AMMs can do, but it also covers everything that order books can do, with some additional bells and whistles as well. So, for example, if you are on a centralized exchange today, and let's say you've got your Bitcoin in the book ready to sell when it hits $50,000. We may not know, how long it's likely to be there. And so if you're setting up, so let's say a concentrated liquidity range on a traditional concentrated liquidity AMM, it could be that you manage to sell some Bitcoins at that level. But if the market capitulates back from that price point, you'll end up buying back all of those Bitcoins that you sold and therefore sort of miss your opportunity to convert yourself back into cash. Carbon, on the other hand, executes its orders irreversibly. So if you do manage to sell the Bitcoins at that specific price target, then you actually do get to keep the cash that you've made, right? You are under no obligation to refund the market if it changes its mind, which is not the case on a conventional AMM. But more to the point, with Carbon, we've set up something called rotating liquidity, which means that you can create limit orders with money that you don't even have yet. So even though Bitcoin at the moment, I haven't looked at the prices recently. I think the last time I checked, it was somewhere around 30K. Let's say that you have an ambition to sell it at 50, but then rebuy it as the price comes back down towards 40. If you were interacting with a conventional order book, there would be no way for you to place a limit order for Bitcoin with money that you don't have yet. Whereas with Carbon, you can create that limit order and use the funds from the proceeds of the sale of your tokens at one price point to rebuy that same token at a different price point. Obviously, you have the flexibility to set up whatever that spread is. So it's a profoundly different way of thinking about on-chain liquidity systems, and that ability to trade perpetually without having to pay gas constantly, I think is something that is that people are definitely warming up to. We've had nothing but a positive reception to people that are using the system, and I'm looking forward to growing our community and taking Carbon cross-chain as well. So it's an exciting time to be associated with the project.
Thank you so much. As you were speaking, I was pinning more things to the top. So I know that we had some, kind of last minute joiners here, and I wish that we were here a little bit sooner, but the call was recorded. You guys can go ahead and give it a listen. Definitely check out the things that we pinned up there up on top. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Angela, it was an absolute pleasure to meet you. I am sure the events that you're hosting will be absolute successes. I look forward to having you back and hearing more about token engineering and just everything that you guys are doing. It's absolutely fascinating, and it's wonderful for the space. And Will and Mark, it's always great to have you guys. Thank you all so much, and thank you to our listeners for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.